Hey, Mr. James. So for my analysis, I did the story by Alice Munro, called The Office, and the story is basically about the narrator, herself being a first-person point of view, talking about first of all how she wants an office. We can first of all we can tell she's a woman because she says she has a husband, and also because she says, I could almost more easily have wished for a mink coat, for a diamond necklace. These are things women do obtain. So, the Alice Munro points out that she's a woman in that situation. So it's about her conquest, to have an office essentially, and it is because, and just as fantastic as it sounds, it's because that's the reason she wants the office, because it sounds nice to her, because her occupation is a writer. So first of all, her story is disturbed by the owner and the seller of the office itself, called Mr. Malley, because he tries to disturb her with, his stories, in the motive that she would write the stories that he tells her in her writing, and and she finds herself listening to him, as because she feels bad, because the Mr. Malley bribes her with all these gifts that he gives to her, and at the end, because the narrator ignored Mr. Malley, that's why the collision occurred, and that's why the story ended quite badly. The story ended after she got the office, after a long quarrel. The narrator finally got blamed for things she didn't do by Mr. Malley, because because Mr. Malley wanted to get her out, is one point of view. So I want to discuss two themes that has to do with this short story. The first theme being what's the meaning behind a name. First, it is seen because it is first seen because when the narrator wanted to get the office, she said, "I was at once aware that it sounded like a finicky requirement." So she says the word sounded is emphasized, which means that um, she wants to get an office just because it sounds good, and also we can see in page one, she says, "I think I ought to have an office. It sounded fantastic even to me." So we can see that in the first page, two of the words "sounded" is repeated. So it means that because it sounded good, because it sounded like a requirement. This is how it relates to her having an office as merely a name instead of like a place to work. She also shows the importance of words in that she says, "I am a writer." That does not sound right. So we can see that the word "sound" is very important in this short story, because to her, everything has to sound right, and to her, she wants to have an office because it sounds good, and she says she's a writer, and she's a bit embarrassed for that, but she wants to make it sound right as well. So the author is playing with, um yeah. So this connects this connects to the story um because it is seen later that Mr. Malley has a different view on things, and that um sorry. Before that, the author is also playing with character and with the sound of things. So essentially, everything that has to do with the narrator must sound right to her. This has an impact later on in the story, because Mr. Malley has a different point of view, compared to her. It is seen in page 272. He said, Mr. Malley said, uh, now you came to me and said, "Mr. Malley, I want a place to write in. I believed you, and I gave it to you. I didn't ask any questions. That's the kind of person I am." Um, so it's kind of different in that, in relating back to the case in that what is in the name. The author wanted an office because it sounded right, whereas Mr. Malley wanted to give the office to her because she wanted to write, which is what he believed in, um, which is why which is one of the reasons Mr. Malley blamed her for as well. So we can see that Mr. Malley is less concerned on the name itself, on the name of an office. Instead, he's more focused on the productive side, on how the office is used to write. In which case, he tells the narrator stories and also gives gifts in the hope so that his stories can be embedded with the writer's writing as well. Um, the narrator uses the technique of contrast to compare these two individuals, and also to um, so that it relates to the theme, in that one person believes that one person believes everything must sound right, and a name holds everything, whereas another individual holds the belief that it is not a name but what is done revolving it. So we can also see that later on in the second theme that the technique of contrast is used repeatedly by the author in order to emphasize certain things. Um, there's also the second theme is a minor one, and it has to do with first impressions and stereotypes, because the narrator and also the characters have certain stereotypes towards it. First of all, the narrator understands that there are stereotypes that has to do with her, and has to do with her as a mother and also as a woman, and that she says the children, learning of my plans, greeted them with most skeptics and unconcerned. Sorry, dashing skeptics and unconcerned. So we can see that even her children stereotypes her as being a mother, a person who should stay at home. So we can first of all see the stereotype as for the children, and she also the narrator also understands her being stereotyped, and but then the character of the narrator is that she wants to break the stereotypes. After that, she says, nevertheless, I went down to the shopping center to look for the office. So she wants to break the stereotypes that her children placed on her. Um, it is also seen that aside from that, the narrator wants to break stereotypes, but she wants to stereotypes to stick with other people. And in this case with Mrs. Malley, she first of all describes Mrs. Malley to us, the readers, at page 265, and she goes on by saying, the narrator goes on by saying, I did think that she would have no children. The stress of her life, wouldn't let her. It did not allow it. In this, I was not mistaken. So we can see the emphasis on the word she was not mistaken, and then she gave the stereotype, and then she expected her first impression on Mrs. Malley to be correct, and we can see that her worldview wants people to stick with their stereotypes, and except for because she realizes that these stereotypes exist, and um she wants she believes that people should stick with their stereotypes. That's why when she broke her stereotype, she felt a bit um so when she broke her stereotype, she felt a bit um like she questioned herself. So that's the second theme, which is kind of rather minor, and the third theme has to do with the story, is the unchanging mindsets of individual. We can see throughout this short story that people are very people don't change their minds and don't adjust well with the situation. We can see this both in the narrator and both with Mr. Malley, because both these two main characters are the ones that are impact that show this characteristic and show out this theme the most. First of all, we can see in page 267, um, the narrator said, he saw my behavior in this hazy and tolerant light. Uh, at least he did not ask me, as I half expected. This shows that she likes. First of all, this shows again the stereotype of an old man, and that that he doesn't want to know the life of the narrator. And then she goes on saying, half expected. Or the unexpected factor. This means that she doesn't want Mr. Manley to ask her questions. And sorry, after that, going back to the theme, the unchanging mindsets of these individuals. Um, the narrator says, "I had not planned it. I am taking an office to take on a responsibility of knowing any more human beings." So again, she says this line in order to say that she didn't get an office to know other people, and even though Mr. Malley wanted to give her ideas and gave her gifts, she didn't want to change her mindset, and she had this spot on thinking that she didn't want to change, and it's in a way stubborn and inflexible, but it's also in a way productive. We can also see this characteristic with Mr. Malley because he doesn't want to change his mind as well. But again, we can see back to the narrator. She says, "When he had gone, I felt better, even a little exhilarated at my victory." So we can see that throughout the story, she showed how sickened she is by the behavior of Mr. Malley, because she already mentioned that she didn't want to know anyone else, and she wanted to work in her office. But we can see repeatedly that Mr. Malley came into her room to give her gifts, to give her story ideas, and to basically butt in her life, which is something that she doesn't like. This is the reason why it ended up bad at the end, and Mr. Malley blamed her for everything, and which led to the separation and how she doesn't want to use the office anymore. Sorry, she got kicked out of the office. We can see it through Mr. Malley as well, because it says, because Mr. Malley refuses to change his mind, and also he in a way continues bothering the narrator, even though the narrator already told him that she spot on told Mr. Malley that he was disturbing her, but he continued to bother the writer in an attempt to get his story written in her writing. And since the narrator kept on chewing out and at the end ignored Mr. Malley, this in the end broke up to the fight and the eventual break. So we can see that the bad ending occurred after both of these individuals refused to change their mindsets. So we can see that these themes affect the characters as well as the plot of the story written by Alice Munro, and yeah, that's it. Thank you.